Some of the most powerful, godlike abilities in all of Pokemon are only available on the most random, unassuming little creatures you can imagine. And I'm not just talking about obvious ones that are discussed all the time, like Wonder Guard on Shedinja and Moody on the various Pokemon that get that. I'm talking about lesser known examples of this that fly under the radar because the Pokemon that get access to these abilities just aren't very good. Let's explore such a concept immediately, urgently. You would really not think that an ability called Simple would be so outstanding, but just read the text. The ability Simple grants the effect of doubling a Pokemon's stat stage changes. Now this does have a negative effect. If you receive a stat debuff, that is also doubled, but this is largely incredibly positive. Swords Dance goes from a ×2 special attack boost to a ×4 special attack boost. Calm Mind becomes insanely powerful, granting ×2 special attack and special defense in a single turn. On any half-decent Pokemon, this ability would be insane. I mean, imagine Volcarona with this, getting basically 2 Quiver Dances in one turn. The problem, though, is that Simple is only available on 2 noteworthy Pokemon, those being Swoobat and Bibarel. Swoobat is a dreadful Pokemon and a often forgotten Pokemon. Weird pig bat creature, kind of ugly looking. I sort of like it, but not a popular one. Its stats are mediocre. It has impressive speed, but everything else is terrible. And Psychic Flying is a typing that really is not doing you any favors, Swoobat. I'm sorry. You are weak to Ghost and Dark and Rock and Electric and Ice and so many common types. It's a dreadful defensive typing on an already dreadfully below average Pokemon. At least Swoobat having access to Simple gives it something to do in the lower tiers. It's actually not in the game in Gen 9, but it is ranked RU in National Dex, which is a little bit impressive. National Dex is the fan format where everything from every Pokemon game is allowed. Swoobat is definitely punching above its weight considering the terrible typing and stats, with an RU ranking here. Largely thanks to Simple and also stored power really helping you with taking advantage of those simple boosts that can ramp quickly. The other Pokemon that gets access to Simple is Bibarel. Bibarel is perhaps even worse than Swoobat is, though, with much less impressive stats. A measly 85 attack is your highest stat and everything else is dismal. Normal water typing is perhaps a little bit better than Swoobat's Psychic Flying typing, but it's not fantastic either. Normal typing leaves you vulnerable to fighting type attacks. Bibarel does have access to Swords Dance though, which thanks to Simple gives you a swift ×4 attack stat, and you at least have priority moves to make up for your poor speed. You have Quick Attack with Stab on it. I believe you also have Aqua Jet. Yes indeed you do have Aqua Jet. We can be thankful that the ability Simple is only available on these comedic joke Pokemon, because on anything that much better than this would be an insanely good and broken ability very easily. The Pokemon Frostmoth is an absolutely tragic sight. A pretty beautiful Pokemon design, very cool, and one that seems to have potential with its access to Quiver Dance and a high special attack stat, but Frostmoth is unfortunately a victim of having perhaps the worst type combination in all of Pokemon, Ice, Bug. These typings go together terribly. You are ×4 weak to Fire and Rock, which is absolutely dreadful, as well as being weak to just about every other type under the sun. With almost no defensive merit here and pretty unimpressive defensive stats, Frostmoth has a serious uphill battle. But they did give it an ability to try to balance that out a little bit, and in a vacuum, this is one of the strongest abilities of all time. It is exclusive to Frostmoth, but it is nonetheless absolutely tremendous. The ability Ice Scales causes this Pokemon to receive half damage from special attacks. All special attacks just deal half as much damage to you. This is truly one of the most incredible defensive effects on any Pokemon ability, and so many Pokemon desperately wish they had access to this. Only Frostmoth has this, and regrettably, it's not enough of a benefit for Frostmoth to really see much usage anyway. Perhaps the stat line on Frostmoth is a bit of overcorrection on the fact that they thought this ability would be too powerful, so they gave it pretty minimal HP and defense and only 90 special defense. This ability is not saving Frostmoth from its general poor bulk and vulnerability to so many types. But I will give Frostmoth some credit. There is one OU team I saw that did use Frostmoth and have some solid success with it, hitting something like 30th in the world. And that Frostmoth was taking advantage of its access to Quiver Dance, a Terra Electric, defensive and offensive typing, to gain steel resistance, Terra Blast Electric for coverage, and also immunity to paralysis. With Quiver Dance and that Ice Scales ability, you can actually stomach incoming hits to find opportunities to boost, and that actually has worked, at least for that player, in OU. Imagine a world in Gen 10 where Frostmoth receives an evolution, perhaps a buff to its stat line, and retains the ability Ice Scales. We might be in a different world. Frostmoth is sort of close to being good. I suppose we'll have to see if that comes to pass or not. A physical counterpart to the ability Ice Scales with a very similar effect would be the ability Fur Coat, which grants a straightforward doubling to a Pokemon's defense. This may remind you of the ability Huge Power, which also just straightforwardly doubles a stat, and that is an ability to cause many Pokemon to just be competitively viable, like Medicham back in Gen 3 and Azumarill in many generations. Fur Coat, on the other hand, is apparently not quite good enough to push any of the Pokemon that do have it to competitive viability, but it's certainly an ability that in a vacuum sounds truly incredible, and I think it's even better than Ice Scales, because by doubling the defense stat, you also increase the damage of the move Body Press, which can be outstanding. Unfortunately, though, this incredible God tier ability is only available on two disappointing Pokemon, those being Furfrou and Alolan Persian. Furfrou has an unimpressive 60 defense, which does reach very high levels when doubled by this ability if you want to invest in defense, but Furfrou does not exactly have the move pool or the tool set to take advantage of a great defense stat, and its unfortunate mono-normal typing is not doing you any favors either. On another Pokemon, this ability could be excellent even with a measly 60 base defense, just because doubling is such incredibly high value. But Furfrou, even despite all of its outfits that it has, such as the Pharaoh Furfrou outfit and perhaps the hat outfit available to it, it's just not enough to lead to any competitive viability. And isn't it funny, all these Pokemon seem to be Natdex RU. It's a common theme. The same is exactly true of Alolan Persian, who is also RU. Okay, I think I've discovered that actually in Natdex RU must be the lowest tier, because I looked up Love Disc and that is apparently RU. That can't be right. Where does Makago stand? Oh, look at that, RU? Well, how convenient. How about Grumpig, also RU? I think we found a common theme, haven't we? Everybody's RU. But that's outside of the point. Forgive the tangent there. Alolan Persian is also just not very good at taking advantage of that Fur Coat ability. Original Persian was a more of an offensive threat with high speed. Alolan Persian also has 60 base defense, and it's not really a guy you want to invest defense into. It has options like Knockoff and Taunt and Parting Shot, Pivoting, and actual damage to deal. It doesn't have healing moves or great utility, or much to do with Fur Coat, and a Mono Dark typing also doesn't serve this ability that well. It's kind of a strange ability design on these Pokemon that don't get a lot out of it, but they still choose to use it for the general bulk it provides, even without any defensive investment, so it's better than nothing. Doesn't change the fact that in a vacuum, this is one of the strongest abilities ever made. The ability Stakeout is available on quite a few Pokemon actually, but none of them are very good. Stakeout is one of the strongest offensive abilities ever created. This Pokemon's offensive stat is doubled against a target that's switched in this turn. Obviously this is incredible. The whole point of offensive Pokemon is to invite defensive switches in and pressure them. This is one of the most common things that happens in Pokemon. Defensive switches to tank incoming hits. Stakeout doubles your damage if the enemy is making a defensive switch, aka the majority of the time if you're a damn offensive Pokemon. That's sort of what happens. So effectively, double damage. How absolutely outstanding. Unfortunately, the pool of Pokemon with access to Stakeout are very unimpressive. You have the atrocious Gumshoes, who is a mono-normal type with very little to offer. It actually has a decent attack stat, but it's so slow, it's so frail. And stab normal moves are just not going to cut it in today's economy. It at least has U-turn at Earthquake, so it's decent physical move pool, but Gumshoes has never really achieved very high heights. Thievul is another one. Thievul, more of a special attack-oriented Stakeout user with a Dark typing. That has some potential, as Dark is a great offensive type. Dark Pulse, very spammable with choice specs. You even have Parting Shot for pivoting. Pretty impressive sounding Pokemon. Unfortunately, though, only 87 base special attack and incredibly average elsewhere. Can actually get something done in Gen 8 lower tiers, but not a very impressive guy. And then there's Spidops, sort of a comedy Pokemon, one of the funnier Pokemon. Always been fond of the design of Spidops. I think they did well with this, but Spidops, of course, is nothing more than a work of comedy with its dreadful stats and monobug typing. It does have Stakeout, but that's barely going to improve your measly 79 attack. Spidops actually carries some okay offensive options like Knockoff, First Impression, and Leech Life, but look at it, this guy, I could crush him under my foot very easily, as he is nothing more than a little insect, just another one for the tub. Somebody in the comments will surely be upset with me if I don't mention Mabostiff for 2 seconds here. Also has Stakeout, also not that good, a bit better than Thievul with 120 attack, but too slow, too frail. Sorry Mabostiff, Dog Days Summer. It's a Dog Day Summer. Perhaps one day Stakeout will be on something actually good, but that day has not come yet. But you can imagine the potential of such an incredible ability is very high. Now this one you may actually be aware of, because it's kind of an iconic one. The Pokemon Ditto is known for its transformative properties, and it has the signature ability Imposter, which allows it to instantly transform into the opposing Pokemon on switch. What you might not know is that Imposter is not just good, it might be the best ability in the whole game, actually. In theory, anyway. In a perfect world. Imposter transforms you into a copy of the enemy, and it copies all of their stats, stat stage changes, other effects that they might be benefiting from. And Imposter is designed with a little bit of a caveat attached to it, because it copies all of their stats except for HP. The HP is the one stat you don't copy, and you retain Ditto's HP, which is only base 48. And this is a detriment, because 48 base HP is far lower than most Pokemon. So you're going to be a weaker version of the Pokemon you're copying, but still has its uses, of course, giving Ditto an actual niche here and there to counteract boost sweepers. But if Imposter was available on any Pokemon, it would be the best ability in the game, because that downside could be turned into an upside. Famously, the most powerful Pokemon in Hackmons, a format where you can hack whatever ability you want onto any Pokemon, is Chansey with Imposter. Because Chansey has not a low HP stat, but an astronomically high HP stat. So when Chansey transforms into something, it becomes a way better version of the thing it's transforming against, because it has Chansey's HP and none of the downside. Imagine a Chansey transforming into Shuckle, for example. Shuckle has massive defenses, low HP. Now Shuckle has Chansey's HP. Imposter also allows you to carry an Eviolite and still get the benefit of the Eviolite when you're transformed, even if the transformed Pokemon is not fully evolved. Because Chansey is a Pokemon that can use Eviolite, it will transform and then receive a defense and special defense boost on top of having a much higher base HP than the enemy. So if copying the huge HP stat of Chansey wasn't enough, now you also have an Eviolite boost on top. Another thing you can do with Imposter is run a Pikachu with Light Ball. Light Ball is an item that grants doubled attack and special attack, and you can become a copy of the enemy with doubled attack and special attack. So in theory, in this world where you can put any ability on any Pokemon, Imposter is actually the best ability. And Chansey with Imposter is absolutely broken. Now, I suppose calling this a terrible Pokemon is not exactly accurate, because Araquanid is currently ranked OU, but to be fair, is largely just because it's a solid sticky web setter. Araquanid has had a tough time historically in competitive with its unfortunate bug water typing and overall pretty bad stats, sans special defense. But Araquanid has one of the best abilities ever created, exclusive to it. Water Bubble is an unbelievable ability, granting double power to water-type attacks, whether they're physical or special, also granting burn immunity, and causing you to take half damage from fire-type attacks. That is so much in one ability. Araquanid is of course designed with this in mind because it has terrible offensive stats. So doubling these offensive stats is not that devastating, and it's also restricted just to water-type damage, but I mean, imagine this on any half-decent water-type Pokemon and it would be insanely overpowered, especially if it's a physical attacker immune to being burned. I mean, any Pokemon would honestly appreciate this, whether they're water-type or not. It's absolutely incredible. It's 3 powerful things in one. We saw how good Baxcalibur was, and that has one of these effects with the burn immunity. Everything else on top of that is just such incredible value from one ability. And beyond its role of being a bulky, sticky web setter with good lead matchups and options like Endeavor, this Water Bubble is also part of the reason Araquanid has a place in OU, because even though Surf is coming off the back of an incredibly low special attack, Water Bubble improves your damage so much that that doesn't even matter. And Surf is incredibly threatening to enemies like Gliscor, Great Tusk, and Iron Treads, which is incredibly significant, and it's what give Araquanid a little bit more value beyond just being a sticky web setter. Komala is one of the most excellent and critically acclaimed Pokemon ever done. A koala creature with a small piece of wood attached that it never lets go of. This koala creature has one of the most thematically appropriate ability designs ever, and in a vacuum, one of the strongest abilities ever. Comatose. This koala is always asleep. This Pokemon cannot be statused and is considered to be asleep at all times. Immunity to status is obviously incredible, but the sleeping part is also interesting. Since you are considered to be asleep, you have access to unique options, like for example, Sleep Talk. If you want, Sleep Talk is a move that you can only use when you're asleep, and it simply uses another move that you have on the moveset randomly. It is a bit of counterplay to sleep sometimes, as if you are asleep, you can still act, even though your action is going to be random. It's also commonly used alongside the move Rest, which puts the user to sleep itself. That is a common combo that stretches back pretty far, but this is interesting because since Komala is always considered to be asleep, it can just use Sleep Talk in its base state without being put to sleep itself or by any other means. And this is interesting because Sleep Talk is a move that can kind of break the game sometimes. The most useful way to use this on Komala is with the move Last Resort, which I guess it doesn't get in Gen 9. That's not very fun. In Gen 7 it got this, and you could run a set that was just Sleep Talk and Last Resort, and this was interesting. Last Resort is a 140 power attack. Incredible attack, but it's hard to use because it will fail unless each other move on your moveset has been used. And it doesn't count if this is the only move on your moveset. If you only have Last Resort and you use it, it won't count. So you have to use a different move and then use Last Resort. But Sleep Talk conveniently can bypass this, because you use Sleep Talk, that meets the condition of Last Resort, and then Last Resort gets used because it's your only other attack. This allows Kamala to be a pretty interesting breaker. I think this was a gimmicky set you could use in Gen 7 1v1. It wasn't very good, but it was funny. I used it for the comedy of it. There's some real potential behind Sleep Talk, because you could use, in theory, Sleep Talk and Roar. Unfortunately, Kamala doesn't learn Roar, but if another Pokemon had this ability and this combo, something interesting might happen. Since Sleep Talk is calling the move and forcing it to execute, it actually bypasses mechanics like priority. Roar is a move that forces the enemy to switch out, but it has negative priority so that it can't be used with speed, because that would be broken. You could simply spam Roar and force the enemy to constantly take Spikes chip damage and Stealth Rock chip damage. But the combination of Sleep Talk and Roar or Whirlwind, which has a similar effect, can bypass the negative priority because Sleep Talk does not have a negative priority, and Sleep Talk forces the move to be executed regardless of its priority level. So that is really interesting. It could also be used with Dragon Tail, for example, and that would be good. Dragon Tail is an attack that has a similar effect and would actually disable the enemy from being able to respond to this attack because it's being done with speed. Unfortunately, all of that is impossible, but theoretically this could be an incredibly powerful combo on top of the general status immunity that you have. Revival Blessing is another move you could call with Sleep Talk, theoretically, that would bypass the downside of Revival Blessing only having 1 PP. Sleep Talk does not expend the PP of the move that is used through Sleep Talk, so you could theoretically use Revival Blessing 16 times, which is obviously incredibly good. So it's an ability with a very high potential, and in fact, I believe the combination of Comatose and Sleep Talk is banned in Hackmons because of all the game-breaking ways that can be abused. And finally, we have a lesser appreciated ability on the Pokemon Pyukumuku. This is a Pokemon that's sometimes used in competitive. It's an interesting Pokemon because it doesn't learn any attacks, it has incredible defenses, and the ability Unaware, which ignores stage changes. Kind of a dastardly Pokemon, if you ask me. A bit of an immoral Pokemon. But there is another ability on this Pokemon that is less talked about. Many Pokemon get Unaware. Everyone knows that's a great ability. This guy gets an exclusive ability called Innards Out, which is rather an interesting one. If this Pokemon is KO'd with a move, that move's user loses an equal amount of HP. So basically, if you get KO'd, the Pokemon that attacked you takes as much damage as they just dealt. Now, overall, on Pyukumuku, this is a worse choice than Unaware, which ignores stage changes, making you immune to like a +6 Dragonite. So obviously that's better, but Innards Out has a lot of potential, and you can imagine how. Pyukumuku unfortunately has low HP, only 55 base HP, but what if Innards Out was used on a Pokemon with high HP? Like a Blissey. Blissey with Innards Out would be insane. Because Blissey has so much HP that it wouldn't even need to die from full health to just one-hit KO the enemy that's trying to attack it, because its actual HP value is so significant. And this ability would make it really awkward, because you always have this safety net where a sweeper can't KO the Pokemon in front of it, at risk of just dying itself. And it would make actually getting rid of a defensive wall really awkward too, because it would take you down with you. In certain Pokemon, it would almost be like having Destiny Bond active all the time. Except, you know, if you chip the Pokemon down enough to avoid lethal damage from the Innards Out proc, but it's like just having Destiny Bond or an explosion in your back pocket all the time, and that's incredibly powerful. And in fact, Innards Out is another example of a banned ability in Hackmons, because of how powerful this is on certain Pokemon. Blissey is the chief abuser of it. And Blissey is of course the most extreme example of this in the game, since it has the highest HP stat, but you could imagine this ability being good on other Pokemon too. Like a Hazard Setter that dies and then just takes the enemy with them. That's an incredible trade. Some Pokemon that gets a bit of value, dies, and then maybe it doesn't even have to one-hit the enemy, but it just does such significant damage to them that it's so awkward for them. When you can turn your own death into a weapon, that is a powerful idea that just makes things very awkward. There you have it, folks, some examples of incredible abilities with very high potential that are regrettably only on Pokemon that kind of suck. I personally think it's fun design whenever you give a random crap Pokemon a really broken ability like this. It is a form of counterbalance to their other flaws and can actually give them something to do in higher tiers occasionally, as we've seen with Araquanid surprisingly rising to OU because of its unique quality to deal a bunch of damage with Surf unexpectedly. It's actually an example of that being a really positive thing. This is always interesting design in my opinion, and it's fun to theorycraft the potential of these abilities on more powerful Pokemon. And it's interesting to see that some of the most incredible abilities in hacked Pokemon are borrowed from random little crapmons like Vinifera and Pyukumuku. What do you think, folks? Which is your favorite? ability design here. Mine is probably Water Bubble. I think that's a very cool ability. But let me know yours, and thank you for watching as always.